Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Migan. I am a public speaking and leadership expert and the host of the Speech House podcast. More than ever, companies need to build strong brands if they want to remain competitive and win the attention war. But what does it mean to build a strong brand? And what about their employees? How could people, from employees to CEO, can promote their companies while building their own personal brand? Well, if you're curious about those topics, I recommend that you keep listening because we are going to cover all those topics with our guest of today, Darya Krakaviak. Darya is the brand and communication lead at Enrich and works as a branding and communication consultant for both commercial and non-commercial sector. For the past 8 years, she's been working in communications for international B2B hardware and SaaS companies, managing multiple joint projects with Fortune 500 companies. Her primary expertise lies in packaging and communicating the value of B2B products via a mix of online and online channels. She also holds a postgraduate diploma in strategic communication from King's College London. Darya, welcome to the Speech House podcast.
Yep. Hi. Hello. Many thanks for having me, and thanks for this nice, detailed intro of mine. I'm super glad to be here and to dive into the topics that we outlined for today.
Thank you for being there. So it's a pleasure. It's mine. Actually, we were talking before we started recording on how we met. It was already maybe 5 years ago or eight. I don't remember. Like it was at the Web Summit during a workshop. Do you remember?
Yeah. That was also a special web summit since that was the last web summit before the COVID hit. It was
True.
2019. Yeah, and we
Yes.
joined the I'm Remarkable workshop that was hosted by the Portuguese I'm Remarkable branch, essentially. And
Yes.
yeah, as I was saying, I think that in my opinion, it really made a difference in how we connected with each other, even though we met just once in person. But the
Yes.
fact that we met there and we got to exchange some actually quite personal stories of some struggles at the workplace, at the tech company, as a woman that you might encounter, or some of the challenges that we had. So, yeah, I think that that was the primary reason why ever since then, whenever I would see your posts on LinkedIn or your updates, I would be like sincerely interested and excited for you because I got to know you quite well. So, yeah, I think that's,
Thank you.
yeah, a great story of
Thank you
ours.
so much, and thank you for sharing that because I feel the same way. And it's true that sometimes you meet a lot of people during conferences, and because you see a lot of people, it can be a bit superficial. But it's true that that was a very remarkable workshop, and
Indeed,
it was
yeah.
great keep in touch along all those years. So I'm very happy that you are joining me for having that conversation today. And I would like our guests to get to know you more. And could you share your background and how you actually decided to choose a career in communication?
Yeah, sure. So basically, originally I come from Belarus. That's where I was born. That's where I also got my bachelor's degree. I was studying international economic relations, and quite early on, I felt that the field of economics as such is not something that appeals to me that much. And for that reason, since I did want to make the most of my university years, quite early on, I started to try to do things. And these were all kinds of volunteering projects, internships, essentially wherever I could get into with the amount of expertise that I could get by then, I pursued that. And somehow, since from high school years, I was traveling quite a lot for debate championships all over the
Mm,
world and exploring the world and its opportunities, essentially. I
wow.
somehow have always lived with this idea that the international projects and international companies appeal to me so much more, which is why, yeah, I specifically pursued those. And I think one of the major starting points for me was when I joined the British Embassy in Minsk. as the
Hmm.
communications intern. There was quite fierce competition for that position. As I was told afterwards, there were like 102 people applying for that. I was a 2-year student back then, was really ambitious, was super excited to get this position, and I did get it in the end, which I think helped me a lot when applying for like further part-time jobs and then full-time jobs, since that was quite a special experience to have, being a the second year student essentially. So yeah, that's was essentially the place where I, for the first time, got an idea of what communications manager position implies and how multifaceted it is, that there are all kinds of channels, all kinds of content formats, how you choose the one, how you adapt this like major strategy coming from the foreign office, for example, and how you adapt it to the local audience so that you still stay true to your brand,
Yeah,
essentially, and to your targets, but then you remain relevant to the locals. So yeah, that was a great experience indeed. And then after that, I was specifically pursuing the communications marketing related positions. And
hmm,
then after some time, like I graduated from university, I did an exchange semester during the time as well. I joined the company called Hypervision, and that up to this date essentially remains the company where I've worked the longest. I spent
yeah,
6 years there, and
okay.
that's the B2B hardware company. That's backed by Mark Cuban, Richard Branson. It
Oh,
develops this very visual technology, the devices that produce holographic like images and videos. It's used
oh wow.
quite extensively in entertainment, education, advertising events. And yeah, that was a super exciting time. And that was the place where I got this experience that you mentioned in my intro about the Fortune 500 companies. Because, yeah, we got a lot of requests from those. I joined the company as the 12th employee. And when I was
Hmm.
leaving, the company was almost 170 people or so. So
Wow, that's impressive.
yeah, like the growth was just huge, very fast, which is why when I look back, each year was so different from the previous one because things kept changing so much. And yeah, I think that's the place to which I owe essentially. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I got there, since, yeah, I got to learn a lot and got to try to do a lot and set up a lot of processes myself, which is invaluable experience essentially. And now I work in
That's
the
exciting.
SaaS. Yeah, and now I work in the SaaS company since I wanted to get to the other side, sort of the tech world.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's where I am now. I work for the Finnish company called Enreach, where I
Yes.
do brand and communications. Hope that wraps it up. uh,
Yeah, no, thank you so much
yeah.
for sharing your story. And a couple of things that I when I was listening to you, that I found fascinating. It's first, that you were traveling for debate competition that you said. And I always, I mean, I come from as you know, I come from a sport background, so I always think that, or any form of competition is very important and really helps you in your professional career. And I'm really fascinating how, like, as a young person, you understood that and was traveling for, usually when people think about debate competition, it's quite local, via national, but you actually took it further. And I loved what you say about being ambitious and chasing what you wanted, because oftentimes, especially as young people, we tend to feel like, okay, we should play small, but you were like, you know what, I'm going to go and get that job. And again, that was amazing. I loved what you shared about your background, because it really inspires people that, regardless of your background, you can go and apply if you work for it, and if you committed, and then yes, and working for great tech companies such as Hypervision, and with like big dogs like Mark Cuban and Richard Branson, must have been also a very great way to learn fast, because like you said, you were the 12th employees. And when you see companies going to almost 200 companies at such a fast pace, it shows that you must have been doing something good, uh, because definitely you learn different some of the skills. What are the skills that you feel during that journey that you've learned while you were at that company?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think that first off, it's this readiness to make mistakes. Even though
Yes.
I'm
Oh,
saying that, but I still can't say, like wholeheartedly that I was 1000% ready to make a mistake. Of course, I was nervous first off, but then
yes.
like overcoming this nervousness and yeah, just being really clear with yourself that yeah, we were just 12 people. There was not like no one to guide me, but everyone was just really busy with all kinds of other stuff, and I felt that I was trusted to try to do things how I saw fit, essentially. Um,
Mm.
I think that this environment really helps me thrive a lot, and this is what helped me a lot when I was setting up things. Essentially, I was mostly involved in events initially, and
Yes.
setting up this process of preparing for this huge trade shows, then at the same time outlining the strategy for next year. So I think, yeah, that's fearlessness to a certain extent, but to an adequate extent, I think.
Yes.
And yeah, this readiness to make mistakes was the main point. And also, I think that the thing that still helps me up to this date, and specifically back then, was being as realistic as possible with my capabilities and my limitations, so to speak. So to
Oh.
be like really honest with myself as to where I think I might be lacking something, and going to get this knowledge. This could be as simple
Mm.
as Google search, or asking the industry colleagues, for example. And yeah, when taking decisions internally, essentially outlining as like cold-headed as possible, essentially what we have, what we are basing our decision on, and what I think based on what I have would be the best way to go. Um, so yeah, it's about the trust, I think, to quite some extent as well, because I do know that I'm always doing my best, and if something didn't work out, then it's not me who is to blame as such, because I
Yeah.
know that having the information I had and being in the situation I had, I trust myself that I did my best. And it doesn't mean that I do not get sad or disappointed at times, of course, but at least I'm trying not to beat myself up too much. And I think that's the kind of tip if I
Yeah.
would like share with the others who
Yeah.
might be hesitant, because we all can be.
And it's such an important message, and thank you so much for sharing that very candidly, because sometimes, like, especially when we are young professionals, we tend to feel like, oh my gosh, the when we do mistakes, it's the end of the world, and we're going to get
Hmm.
fired. And it's important to remember that, especially like big companies and very successful entrepreneurs, understand that you're going to make mistakes, and that it's okay. And then it's not so much about the mistake, it's about how you recover from it and what you do next. It's about keeping going. And I really like what you shared. And wow, such a gift, when you start your career to have when you started your career, to have the ability and the possibility to make mistakes, to have people trusting you. And I think that it's something very important. And then that, like you said, to give advice to people and to also look for companies that actually give you that space when you interview, asking because a lot of time people feel trapped in processes and that they cannot do what they want, and then they feel a bit scared to make mistakes. So it's great that you're the perfect example that, okay, you make mistake but then you learn from that. And also I love what you said about asking for help and being humble about that, because a lot of times we feel like we have to know everything. One of the things that I always tell my clients is, if you don't know, well, you know what you say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And people are always like, but what if I look bad? No, it's better to say I don't know, but like you said, let me Google, let me go find the answer,
And it's so
than just.
liberating, actually. Yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. It is. And then you go and find the answer, and then you give the answer. It actually makes you look even better because it shows that you care about the people you're talking to, that you're not wasting their times. The worst thing is like pretending that you know the answer and then answer something that has nothing to do. And actually that's where you lose credibility. So it's great that you were able to share that, and thank you. And so as a brand and communication manager, what is the first thing that you do when you arrive at a new company
So the
in terms
first,
of, you know, yeah.
yeah, so of course, like this onboarding part where you try to learn as much as possible about what has been historically done inside the company, what they think worked well, what didn't.
Mhm.
And then, if once I approach my immediate scope of tasks, essentially, being the brand and communications tasks, and if, for example, the job is to do a rebranding or overall the review, the audit of the situation, I think
Okay.
I would usually start with the positioning of the company
Okay.
and of their products and services, because
Hmm.
even though this is something that everyone would have in a certain form, because if they exist, they would have something said on the website, right, or whatever they say and share in the sales decks. But
Hmm.
this is something that I think more or less like personal identification of ours that keeps changing year after year because we pursue
Yeah.
certain things. We yeah, reconsider some of our values and stuff. And the same with the companies. Specifically nowadays, if we look at the tech world, which keeps being innovating day in and day out, essentially, you really need to take these pauses to do a check-in with yourself. And I think that's the job of the brand and communications manager to a large extent, especially once you join the company, because that's also usually one of the things why you were employed in the first place,
Yes.
because they do want someone to take care of it. So yeah, I
Definitely.
would say that positioning is this foundation essentially, and perhaps it's worth mentioning here what it is that I imply by
Yes.
positioning. That would be what the company offers, what value it
Okay.
brings, and to whom. I think that's this really simple and very helpful framework to do these
Yes.
check-ins in. Because recently, for example, at Enrich, we had this strategic session on the positioning and differentiation and yeah, that's basically how we approach that. Even though we did try a lot of other frameworks in between, it still oftentimes gets down to something as simple, seemingly simple, of course, because in reality it is hard to honestly answer to yourself first off what it is that you are ready to limit yourself to, because I think that's
Yeah.
very often how founders see that. So they dearly love the product, they dearly love services, and they would want how to say, people to know as many use cases as possible. They want them to see as
Yeah.
multifaceted as it is, even though that's actually in 9 out of 10 situations not the best way to go, because you can't be everything to everyone. And to take
Yes.
this, decision that, okay, we are ready to limit, or rather, I more love the word frame, like to frame ourselves
Mhm.
to this specific use case, to this specific value, to this specific audience. And then if others keep coming up and we see that it's rather for this something else or for that someone else, we can always reconsider that. And of course, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you should do that weekly or something, but it's okay that it can change. It's okay.
Hmm. And I like what you say about like how it's very important. So thank you first of all for clarifying positioning and also that people and companies and startups, and you're right, should understand that you need to have a framework and that you can't, because we, like you said, it's what I call like the catalog complex,
Mm.
where you want to show everything that you're doing well. I believe it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that building a brand is a long-term things, and then you start with the framework, and then as as time goes, that's when people to get to know more of what you have to offer, but you cannot come with everything because it becomes overwhelming, and also it makes you lose your identity. If you are everything, like you said, everything to everyone, you actually nobody to no one.
Mm.
So I think this is important that you share that.
If I
So
may add
in terms of,
here, I
yes,
think something that from the conversations I keep having, what I keep saying founders as if they are always the ones to blame, but decision makers, let's say decision
yes,
makers in the company, one of the points they might be missing is that we as brand and communication experts encouraging them to focus on this one or maybe two somethings, um,
hmm,
simply because we as humans have a certain limitation, I would say, in terms of how much we can memorize. So it's as
yeah,
simple as that. It gets down
yeah,
to it. And to have this one something to remember you for can do wonders, essentially, because they might not remember the actual company name, especially in the starting stages, but then they would
yes.
keep this one message or this one thing that the service can help them solve, and how it will make them feel in a way that like processes might become easier or more efficient or whatever. So yeah.
No, and thank you for saying that. It's true. It really comes to, like I was saying in the introduction. We are in the attention war, because we're all fighting for attention, and if you give people like 20 things to remember, they're just going to be like, well, you know what? I'm going to keep scrolling and forget about you. So so it's true. It comes down to one thing, very easy to remember, and then let's move on. So in terms of editorial strategy, or because your company is one of the leading experts in econ based marketing, but what is the in a more general sense your tips in terms of how to build, and what are the techniques you can use in order to build an efficient editorial strategy?
The word framework keeps popping up quite a lot during our podcast, and I will mention it again because I
Yeah.
think that, yeah, once you find this working frame for yourselves, it just really helps you be focused and efficient in whatever it is you are
Yes.
developing for the company. And at Enrich, this year we discovered for ourselves the framework that the company Cognizant uses. It's called Easy Mode Framework, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken, and I will happily share the link with you as well
Yes,
so that we
please.
can include it, because I think that's
Yeah.
a great way to look at the content strategy. And essentially,
Okay.
the idea here, or like within this framework, is to identify the main strategic narrative of the company, what it is you
Okay.
want to communicate to the market. And in our case, so we are the account-based marketing platform. We want to communicate the message that spray and pray approach in sales and
Mm-hmm.
marketing doesn't work anymore. And you really need
Yeah.
to keep your efforts as focused as possible and as account based as possible. And by accounts, we mean these
Yeah.
ideal companies that a certain business wants to work with. And then
Mm.
within this framework, you would develop the actual point of views that help you support this strategic narrative. For example, marketers need to have a seat at the revenue table so that they can influence
Mm.
certain decisions that the company takes, so that in the end it's account based, for example, and this kind of thing.
Mm.
And then you make it more and more granular. You can have
Yeah.
as many point of views as possible, and within those point of views, they call these sparks. So you just keep yeah, as I said, making it more and more granular up to the point where
Yeah.
you have the actual content formats next to it. And this is something that we are still yet to put to practice because we decided to start doing that starting next year. And currently we're still
Okay.
finalizing this strategy for ourselves. But I'm already seeing how we could benefit from it because, for
Yeah.
example, with the certain speaking opportunities that are out there. I was recently working on several applications, and even though when
Mm-hmm.
I look at the application from last year, it's not like it's changing like really drastically in terms of what it
Okay.
is we're pitching to the organizers.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel that it optimizes my process a whole lot because I have a clear idea. Okay, that's the message we want to communicate within this presentation. Here are the supporting points that I could add there. And then once I switch to another application, for example, or once I work on the LinkedIn content, for instance, I always have this clear table in front of me,
Yeah.
and that just makes things so much easier. Onboarding processes become so much easier as well. You can scale things too, because once you onboard some external agency, for example, they would have a clear idea of what it is they need
Yeah.
to
What
do.
you do, what
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
do, and yeah,
Which is why I
that's
love
great.
that. I'm so glad that we discovered it, and I keep telling
Yeah.
everyone about this framework. So, yeah.
No, it's a great, and definitely, yeah, please share, so I can also share with people, because I definitely think that from what I understand, that yes, um because we see that a lot in marketing, and I think that's why sometimes people give, like, a bad rep to marketers, because it feels like they, a bit spammy. But I love what you're saying about, your processes, because you really, there are many things. First of all, you really identify strategic points, and then also you bring the team to be accountable, and to also have incentives. So it really makes everyone involved. I'll give you an example. Sometimes, I work at a co-working space, and then sometimes I see people who give, like, cold calls. And I remember especially that person. I felt like, oh my gosh, it felt like she didn't want to do it, because the script was going on script. And
Mm-hmm.
then, it was just like, I'm not a marketer, and I really have so many respects because it's not easy to do. But I do felt like, okay, well, the way you are explaining things, it feels more empowering for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. And then it also includes, different members from the company. So I really appreciate that. And speaking of the companies, and a lot of times when we look at brandings and branding in companies, we see, one message. But I tend, the more I work with CEOs and companies, and the more I believe that, you should, like you said, have the main strategic points,
Mm-hmm.
but also adapt the communication, based on who is communicating. I believe, and it's not to make a hierarchy, but I think that the employee and the CEO might have a different way of promoting their companies. The values should remain the same, but the way of promoting should perhaps be different. And I would love to have your take on that, and if you apply this to your company.
Yeah, sure, sure. Basically, this year, actually, our head of marketing started promoting this idea and reinforcing it internally, the value of social selling, essentially, and of being present on LinkedIn. We still have a long way to go, since
Yeah.
that's a change management project of its own to an extent, because not all the
Mm.
people are super comfortable of being present in the first
Yes.
place, or of being
Yeah.
present too much, or
Yeah. So
creating
sorry to
content.
interrupt.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. What do you think is that? Like, why do you think people are not so comfortable with being present?
I think that's the spotlight to a certain
Yeah.
extent. And while on the other social networks like Instagram, for
Mhm.
example, or Facebook,
Yeah.
um, these are more personal spaces. And
Yes.
there the judgment might be not that high. And I think on LinkedIn, there adds this pressure that if you're posting something there, you're expected to bring this ultimate value
Mm.
that no one ever talked about before. And I think very
Yeah.
often we create these really strict criteria ourselves, because it's not
Yeah.
like there is this policy out there. And very often it's like, one extreme or the other on LinkedIn. I think that some people who are like really successful in this traditional terms, like they hold some senior positions at the major companies, for example, or
Mhm.
people who are more, maybe they do not have that much practical experience, but they think that that comes like next, second or third, and now I just need to be loud and present. And I think that these days more and more this in between niche, let's call it this way, it keeps being more and more populated, because peers like you and me, for example, we see
Yeah.
that there is interest, there is demand, and we can learn so much from peers, and very often even more so, because these
Yes.
cases of the brands like Apple, Airbnb, I don't know, you name it, all great brands, and very inspiring oftentimes, but not that
Mhm.
practical, because you do not have
Yeah.
these budgets, resources,
That's true.
everything.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that to like wrap up the answer to this question specifically, that would be, I think, this bar that we ourselves might often set too high.
Yeah, I liked what you said, and it's true that sometimes, I was guilty of it too. You know, when you want to post on LinkedIn, you feel like you have to bring so much value, and you post, and you're like, okay, and you read it 20 times, and then at the end you post it, and you like, you think it's going to
And
be,
you keep
and then
checking the
no one
likes
likes
as
it.
well.
Yeah, you keep
Yeah.
checking.
Mhm.
And I'm at the point now when I'm just like timing myself, because I think that, like you said, we learn so much from each other, and that it's important to I mean, from the moment you feel like you really have the intention of bringing value, I tell myself, like, my goal is to bring value to one person every day. Like you said, you lower the standards, and you have to also understand that you cannot compare yourself, like you perfectly said, to Apple or Airbnb, because we don't have the same budget, at least not yet. And then that, yes, you have just to do your thing, and in between niche, you're right, and then like just producing content, not for the sake of having likes, but for the sake of building a brand. And even, I've seen many people actually share with me that the post with 8 likes, which is not a lot in LinkedIn standards, actually sometimes bring them qualified leads.
Mhm.
So you never know. And also, like, I think it's 90% of the population on LinkedIn is silent, just is
Mhm.
watching. like I start seeing people telling me like, oh yeah, I was at a networking event actually on Monday, and then someone said, oh, I think I've seen you before. I thought it was a pickup line,
Mm-hmm.
and and actually then he was like, oh no, I think from LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never seen that person liking my post,
I actually
and so that
experienced the same, and I think that's such
yeah,
an important point. Yeah, recently I was actually at the company event of my previous employer because I'm still oftentimes in touch with them since we have
okay,
worked so long and
that's
done so
cool.
much jointly during my time there. And yeah, some of them were also saying that, oh, I love your posts, even though. Overall, I have quite a good memory. And as you
Yeah,
said, especially once I was starting, I was checking quite closely what
yeah,
kind of likes I was getting. And I wasn't sure that I remembered them liking them or maybe providing any kind of feedback whatsoever, but they did see it. And I think that that's the great point that you made that so many people are silent there, but it doesn't mean
yeah,
that you are invisible to them. Even though I would
absolutely.
encourage all the listeners to provide feedback whenever you like something, and it does not
Yes,
have to be in the form of likes, could be a note or, I mean, whatever someone feels comfortable with, because
yes.
yeah, that's really valuable when you do something.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I agree, and I think yes, it's true. Like to they show some love. At the end of the day, and it's not so much about the likes, but I think you're right. And especially, I like the idea of the notes because sometimes also some people. I had a conversation exactly on that topic once with someone, and the person told me, but I can't like everything, because of my work. And yeah, but you can send a message on LinkedIn and say, I'm not gonna like screenshot you and post it on LinkedIn. And I think it's true, like sometimes too, it's okay. And I try to do it as much as I can, but to also, just encourage people, say, hey, I like what you're doing, and that's it. And not to have always an agenda. It's not about vanity metrics. It's about, also connecting because the beauty of LinkedIn is that it can be everyone can have access. You can talk to basically anyone, and make really good connections. But you're right, and then I really want to encourage people to keep posting because I actually got clients from people who were like, "Hey." And I was really surprised, like, wow, I haven't talked to this person in like 5 years.
Hmm.
And she was reading my post. So, hey, so it's a good thing. And so thank you so much for sharing that. I think
I think
it's
that's,
important
yeah.
to
With the
yeah, go
LinkedIn
ahead.
page, I think one of the ways to look at it could be to, it's like your personal library to an extent, or like your archive or whatever word like appeals
Yeah,
to you more. Even though live, not maybe not that many people would get to see it as you would hope for or whatever, but overall they will remain there. And once someone spots you, they would get to see your line of thoughts essentially, or the content in general that you produced, and that's a huge value in itself. So when someone relevant comes up and they visit your page, they would have something to learn more about you and about your expertise, not just in the form of this description, but in a more human-like posts. So I think that's also
yeah.
important.
Yeah, such a great point, and that reminds me of one of the things that I remember Gary Vaynerchuk
Mm-hmm.
was saying about the importance of being historically correct, and I think that's one of the things that really helped me with the podcast and with all the things, the content that I'm creating, is that telling myself, like you said, well, it doesn't matter because the point is to, like you said, exactly. I'm building something like it. I love the idea of the personal archive and then personal library. It's something that I will use, and you're right. When people discover you, you want to make sure that you have something to show, and that's also a way to consider your LinkedIn, and people can see also the improvement. So one of the things that also I think might refrain people from posting on LinkedIn is perhaps the thought of not being good enough. And but I think that at the beginning it's normal that your first post is not going to be as great at your post number 50, and I would like to have you take on that and how you've experienced maybe that while trying to promote and tell the people from your company to speak more on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think that's like with any other goal setting, essentially. It's important to set some realistic targets for yourself, especially when you start doing something for the very first time. And yeah, it gets down to that. I think when I was starting posting personally myself, even though, of course, deep in my heart, I was hoping to get to 100 right away. But I just kept reminding
Yeah.
myself that this is fine. And if, for example, I posted something and it wouldn't get like no likes or maybe one or two likes during the first hour or so, sometimes, since I do know how social media work, I could send them my post to my two or three closest friends because I do know that that would help boost it. And this is something that
Mm-hmm.
we keep doing from time to time now, that that's a company initiative as well. For example, from the
Yeah.
corporate page, whenever we would make a post, we would share it in the Slack channel. There is a dedicated content Slack channel, and we do not think
Mm-hmm.
that this is something that we as the marketing team should be ashamed of or whatever, because that's
Yeah.
just how the algorithm works. And
Yeah,
it's
for
good
sure.
to help boost it. And I think this is
Yeah.
something that can be totally done with personal posts as well. Because we all have some people in the network who are doing the same thing. They're trying
Yeah.
to become visible, right? Like to become more
Yeah.
noticeable on LinkedIn. And
Mm-hmm.
I, because I do know the struggle myself, I would totally, if someone approached me with that, I would just help them, and that's it.
Yeah.
As simple as
Yeah.
that.
No, you're right, and I think that it's good that people are honest about it, because for me, I remember also, I worked and I managed LinkedIn accounts, and definitely one of the first thing I was doing once it was posted was either tagging people, but also like sharing on the Slack or whatever message channels we had. And I think it's important that, and I love what you said also about sending to some of your friends for your personal content, because I do it as well sometimes, because I think it's important that people understand that you need support, and it's okay to ask for support, because like what you said is not create some fake accounts.
Hmm.
The people actually exist. So there's a really difference between like artificial likes, where you buy likes and that's something different, and that I would not recommend. And okay, making sure that the people involved in your community, in your company, also support your branding efforts. It's, I think, essential. And we should talk more about it, because a lot of time people just pretend that they're just amazing, and then people like
Yeah, they
right
just woke
away.
up great.
Well,
And that's
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
woke
yeah.
up, and then yeah, we're just gonna like. And no, it's important to say that as well. So what also, and speaking on that topic, consistency is one of the things, the main thing people struggle with when creating content, because like you said, the likes, at the end of the day, we still want to have like some support. What are the tips that you will give someone to keep being consistent while producing content?
Yeah, for me personally, that's also something I'm struggling with from time to time because, of course, like priorities change, some more things keep adding up, and
Mhm.
how I'm approaching that, and how I know people from my company are approaching that as well, is first off to try draft the content calendar for yourself so that once
Mm,
you get down to writing a post, you do not have to start with this totally blank page, but you have something to work with.
yeah,
Also, one of the techniques I know helps is to set the limits time-wise for yourself on the writing a post, because otherwise, especially for those perfectionists out there, I think that's
yeah.
really important because
Guilty.
I'm in this team as well. Um, Yeah, to set the timer essentially. Of course, it may depend from post vary. I mean, from post to post, because sometimes we would want to create something more detailed, or maybe other times there would be a certain carousel involved, or yeah, some image, essentially. But
Yeah.
yeah, just to set out those frames, I think that helps as well. Mm, yeah, and I think to review the feed as such more, some of the professional
Okay.
communities more, because I think that also, at least for me, it does help and bring me some thoughts and some ideas of what it
Yeah.
is I could talk about. Yeah, so
Yeah.
these would be top
And
three.
you and thank you for sharing that. And you think that because we talked about LinkedIn because it's the main professional channel, but I was wondering, and do you think that because I mostly post on LinkedIn, but do you think that in your bio, we talked about your efforts, online and offline channels, and I would like you to also share some of those channels that people could use for their branding strategies.
Mm, So basically, with the online ones, so we've covered social media quite extensively
Yeah,
already. So I guess I would not go down that road anymore.
yeah,
Overall, for any company, website would still be this main anchor, so to speak, like this main and primary channel, of which you would then repurpose, for example, some blog articles, some product updates, etc., etc.
mm,
So I would always say that once you start adding in more channels, be it offline, be
yeah,
it online channels, make sure that your primary channel, which is the website, most often,
yeah,
would be as polished as possible. Let's put it this
mm,
way, so that all the
yeah,
messages there are the latest, most relevant, they're comprehensible enough. Because of all the other channels, you would still want to add something where you would want people to end up and get more
hmm,
information, get an opportunity to contact you, and yeah, which is why I think that once you start working on the social media strategy, first you still need to polish your website.
it's important.
Um,
Sorry,
yeah, yeah, sure.
I want to because I think that what we hear a lot, at the moment is like it's all about LinkedIn. Websites are irrelevant. I mean, I'm talking, of course, for companies, no, but like in general, in that tech startup environment, it's kind of make it look that social media, is the most important thing. And I love what you're saying that at the end of the day, you want people to go somewhere, and where do you sell your products or services? It's usually on the website. So it's that's why I really wanted to emphasize on that, because I think a lot of time it start to become forgotten that all you need is LinkedIn account. Yeah, maybe not. So thank you for making that point.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, at least in the domain where I am in now, which is the marketing technology and SaaS, LinkedIn communities do not seem to be that active.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I still think it makes sense to make posts there occasionally, but LinkedIn-wise, I would still say that the feed as such,
Mm.
it's usually full of personal posts
Yeah.
and then corporate posts, and then sometimes from the communities. There is a lot of Slack communities as
Yeah.
well,
Oh.
which I think are on the rise,
Yeah.
especially when done right and when they're not that branded,
Yeah.
because I think that's when it becomes too like selling
Yeah.
in a way,
Salesy.
because
Yeah.
it is hard to keep this balance.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah. Um, yeah, these would be with the communities. Then online wise events as well,
Mm.
which again could be in the form of webinars,
Yeah.
could be LinkedIn lives as
Okay.
well,
Do
or
you
both,
recommend do you
because you
recommend
can stream.
online events and webinars for brands? You think it's something that they should do regularly?
I think that in terms of the regularity, it really gets down to the resources of a
Okay.
particular brand
Yeah.
and also the content, like how often they can come up with new topics and ensure that it's of great quality,
Hmm.
because that's what it comes down to
Yeah.
at the end of the day. But I think that even though it might seem that we are becoming more and more tired
Yeah.
of Zooms and online
Yes.
events, there is still demand for
Okay.
those,
That's good
because
to
it
know.
is, yeah, still convenient, especially when you get the recording.
Hmm.
Then you can repurpose this recording, like make
Yeah.
some short clips, for example, of it,
Mm.
use it then in the advertising, which is why I still love this format a lot. I
Yeah.
just think that, as with any format and as with any channel, it's good to balance them
Mm.
out.
Yeah. I see.
So yeah.
That's good. And then so we were talking, in the intro and during this conversation as well about the personal branding, because we talked about people not wanting so much to post online, but also there are also another issue that people want to actually talk and build their own personal brand while they're being employed by a company. But in some cases, people feel very comfortable doing it. There's no issues. But I know that personally, when I was working for a big company, I kind of, although no one told me that I shouldn't do it, that's not what I'm trying to say, but I felt like I was not as free to do it, that now that I'm working for myself, that I can just share. And you're a very good example of sharing the some personal from branding strategies and why promoting your company. So also that's why I really wanted to have this conversation with you, because what you're doing on LinkedIn is really good. And so how can someone within a company can balance the two, promoting their companies while building their own personal brand?
Yeah, I think here where like one can have this good balance that can work for all the stakeholders essentially
Hmm.
is when you focus on your expertise as such and thought leadership as such,
Okay.
because adding like aggressively some links to your side hustles might be inappropriate.
Yeah.
Of course, it really depends on the policy of a particular company, uh, whether whatever you do on the side competes in any way with the company you work for or not. So all of these things, of course, need to be considered.
Yeah.
But if we take this generalized example and approach, that could work well. I think that's focusing on what it is that you can offer expertise wise.
Hmm.
Because I think that no matter where you work, the fact that your expertise will be visible, especially when you illustrate it with the actual examples from the company, this is something that the company would definitely benefit from as well.
Yeah.
When you get invited to podcasts, for example, like I am
Yeah.
right now, right? Or to certain events to
Yeah.
provide some comment. It would still contain in the job title
Yes.
that's like included with you, it will contain the employer, which is definitely some great value, especially when it also contains the backlink to the website. Who will not enjoy it, right?
Yeah. No,
So yeah.
you said it beautifully, and I really like what you said, because at the end of the day, it benefits the company as well. And a lot of times, because people feel like, oh, okay, they're promoting themselves, they want to go away. It's not about that. It's about, like you said, it's about um, putting, highlighting your expertise, and also, like you said, like being invited to podcasts like today, but also to events. And speaking of events, what are the things when you go to an event that you should do to promote your company? I love what you said about not being too aggressive, and then just like showing, okay, do this with me, or my link or whatever. What are the do's and don'ts that people should do when they're going to events? Something I'm very interesting in terms of branding, because usually you have the post, this is the event, we're going to be there, but I always feel like there is something is lacking. and that people are not using what they could do. It's like, we're going to this event, we went to this event, and that's it. When I always feel that there is so much more to do in terms of branding. And I would love to have your take on that, because you have a lot of experience with industry events.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first off, it would of course depend on the actual event format and the goals that you as the company have for a particular event. Because how I usually like to approach the event types essentially when working on the strategy and plans, even though they can be interconnected, but you can still split them into brand awareness events and
Mhm.
into the sales events,
Okay.
let's call them this way.
Yeah.
And then within those, especially sales events, there could be some more subtypes as to how you would do that. But the major goals would split like this. And if we look at the sales events, for example, I think these would be like really practical oriented,
Hmm.
meaning that there is this clear goal that you would want to have the n number of meetings with the ideal customer profile. And for that, yeah, you would aim to book meetings and you would do that like in a really targeted way, essentially. You can add still, in addition to this, targeting certain employees of certain companies personally, you can still add some advertising, of course, but I think still like this primary strategy, if the company is clear
Yeah.
about who they want to meet, they would usually keep that this way. And with the brand awareness events, I think that's where most fun comes in. Let's put it this way, because you can indeed do a lot, as you rightly said. And I think that the best way to start, of course, is to make sure that all the primary communication channels are clear about this intention and about this plan. And then you would try to create some additional value of whatever content you are bringing to the event. Because I think what's really important to remember with whatever event you are doing is that the majority of the audience that's of interest to us will not be at this event. They are beyond this event. And of course, the audience that's there is super important as well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be going
Yeah.
to this event and you wouldn't be investing. But it's just a matter of not putting everything into one basket, I would say, and also engaging those people who might be going, but they would still be online as well, and
Hmm.
creating. So if we put it into some actual practical terms,
Yeah.
this could be preparing a certain piece of content
Okay.
that would align with the presentation topic, for example,
Yeah.
that you could share via your newsletters
Hmm.
or via your social media accounts as well, so
Hmm.
that people can start getting the idea of it, they can start thinking about it, and they come more prepared, especially if we talk about people who might not be that familiar with your company or with your solution. And you do need, especially in the B2B world, to have this n number of touch points
Yeah.
with the audience, and that could be one additional way to do it, essentially. And you could do the same thing after the event as well, because with the events, so there were three primary stages, like before, during, after,
Yeah.
and you need to make sure to maximize each of those.
Yeah.
And if during the event, I think it's the most straightforward part, more or less, since you are there
Hmm.
and you do, like, you follow this schedule that you
Yeah.
would have. Of course, it's good to back it up with some online activities as well. Um, but still, like
Yeah.
what's happening there is your primary focus.
Okay.
But then after the event, you still have a lot of work to do, a lot of follow-up work, which comes down not only to the people you actually got a chance to interact, which is great, and you need to maximize that. But then there are still so many other people who with who the meeting perhaps didn't happen, or they didn't make it in the end,
All
or
right.
they didn't plan to go there in the first place. So
Mm.
you really need to maximize the content that you produce there. That could be a presentation that you did. So to make sure there is a recording, to make sure that you split it into certain clips. There can also be a blog article of it. Or if the topic did engage well, you could still go to a certain podcast to discuss it further. And I think that with all kinds of communication activities, and also if we look at the personal branding as well, what's really great about them and where the main value comes is from this engagement,
Yeah.
because it helps you develop your thought even further
Mm-hmm.
so that you as the professional can keep making like more educated decisions, for example, or you can illustrate them with more examples. And I just heard this phrase somewhere, I think that was some podcast as well, that clarity comes from engagement. And I
Hmm.
think
I like that.
that's such a great thought, and
Yeah.
that's the main thing you should shoot for whenever you are posting. And by engagement, I mean not just interest,
Yeah.
but the actual development of your thought. Like if you can get that, and if it's just one comment and no likes, that's already a success. Like you
Hmm.
said, if you influenced and like brought value at least to one person, that's great both for them and for yourself,
Yeah.
because that's developing you all the more.
Yeah, I really like that, and again, thank you for sharing. It's very valuable. We are coming towards the end of the interview, and I would love to you to summarize, like for entrepreneurs that might be listening, and like we talked about how the lack of budget can be an issue. An entrepreneur was starting, okay, his effort has a startup and just wants to start his or her entrepreneurial journey. What are the things that he should pay attention to in terms of branding? Like maybe three actionable tips that they could use.
Yeah, I would say that first off, be as honest with yourself as possible, so that you're clear before you start any public activities whatsoever, essentially what it is that you want to communicate. Let's use this term strategic narrative, essentially, what it is that you want to communicate, then why you want to do that, essentially the goal that might be to promote your business further or to make your products appear relevant, like whatever they go for. But
Mm-hmm.
so that they start building this framework for themselves early on.
Mm.
I think this is the kind of foundation that will really help them to scale the activities and to attract the relevant people early on. Because it would definitely change, and it's
Yeah.
great that it will change, because that will mean that the business is developing, you as a professional are developing as well. But at least to have this frame, yeah, I'm not sure whether there can be a better word for it, because it keeps you focused, it keeps you being more unique and more recognizable, memorable to people as well. So I would start with outlining this line of thought. It could be as simple as with a piece of paper,
Yeah.
essentially, who I am, what it is
Mm.
I'm doing, what it is I want to bring to the table, and yeah, to go from there.
I
Seek
love it.
help, seek advice, as simple as from friends,
Yeah.
essentially, as well, who might not be the target audience per se, but they're still an audience, and the audience who most likely you trust and who know you best. So I think that with this exercise, specifically with who you are,
Mhm.
they could be your best go-to point.
Okay, I love it. Well,
So yeah.
and that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Daria. What can we wish you for 2024?
You mean for the listeners?
Yeah,
This is
not
what
for
we should.
you. For you,
Oh, for me.
yes, of course, it's for
Okay.
you today. So, what can I wish you for the upcoming year?
I would say that the energy, I think, is the most desired asset, essentially, to be able to manage your energy well, so that you can accomplish then whatever it is you set your mind on. So, yeah, that's what I would hope for myself, and I would wish the others as well to have enough energy to accomplish things and to be because it will be this fuel to be creative, to be productive, and etc. etc. You insert the word.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you too, Jennifer. Yeah, that was a great conversation. Thanks for that.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe or share this episode with someone you believe might need it. And until next time, stand tall, speak up, and share your story. The world needs it. Bye!